Next, we look at the final measure of central tendency before we then compare all the three of them, which is median. Here we're told to find the median in a discrete frequency table, where we're told these data points that are there, 40 up to 44, discrete data points. And each of them is repeated the following times: 11, 23, 19, 8, and 4, for a total number of repetition of 65. Now, when you're looking at 65 data points, the median is the middle data point. And remember, 65 can be split in the following way: 32 on the lower end, 32 on the higher end, which gives us 64. Then we'll have that one data point in the middle. That data point in the middle is going to be your median, which is going to be your 33rd ordered data point. And the way we get that value of 33 is take the frequency, which is 65, then add 1 to it, then divide by 2, half for the median. This will give us 66 divided by 2, which is 33. This only works if we have an odd number of data points, which is 65 in this case. So in this case, it was odd, so it does work out. Now, where does our 33rd order data point fall in the following table? So the first 11 data points are 40. Remember, this is already ordered. The first 11 points are 40. The next 23 points are 41. And up to here, we have a total of 34 points, which means our 33rd point came when we were counting those 41s as well. And therefore, our median, which is our 33rd ordered data point, is going to fall under the counting of 41 as our data point. So our median is going to be 41. Next, we're told to find the median in a grouped frequency table. Now, the median in a group frequency table, we usually get the median group, just like we had the modal class. And it goes to the same way, where because we have 250 data points, we can split them into 125 on the lower end and 125 on the upper end. Therefore, the median is the last point in this and the first point in this and the average of the two. That means is the 125th data point plus the 126th data point divided by 2. That's going to be what our median is. In this case, where do those 125th and 126th data points fall under? The first 10 fall before 5. The next 40 fall between 5 and 10. So up to now we have 50. The next 90, which brings us up to 140, which means that our 125th and 126th come in this class, which is a class of 10 up to 15. Therefore, this right here, because both of our data points came under this, the average of the two will also come under this as well. Therefore, our median here is going to be the class of 10 to 15 as our heights. Finally, comparing all the three measures of central tendencies that we just talked about, we need to select the appropriate one given our situation. If we choose the wrong one, it may lead to a skewed way of measuring your central tendencies. So we're going to look at the advantages and disadvantages of the mode, mean, and the median, which are the three measures of central tendencies we talked about. For the mode, the advantage of it is it's unlikely to be affected by extreme values, whereby the mean does get affected by extreme values, since it can skew the average up or down depending on how high that extreme is. And the other important advantage of the mode is that it can be used for qualitative data. While the median and the mean cannot really be used for qualitative data, because you can't have the middle data point, because you cannot specifically order qualitative data. But mode, because it looks at the frequency of repetition of the data, and you can have multiple repeated qualities. Therefore, mode is the only way actually you can find the central tendency of qualitative data. The disadvantage of mode, on the other hand, is that it ignores most of the values. It only looks at the ones that are most repeated and doesn't care about the rest. While on the other hand, mean does take into account all the values in the data set. For that reason as well, mode is rarely used in calculations of the higher nature, and instead the mean is used quite often because of the fact that it takes into account all the values that are there. This does lead us to a disadvantage of mean as well, because we cannot find the mean unless we know all the values in the data set. If there are certain values that are unknown, then we can't really use the mean that well. Which then brings us to the median, where the median, you don't really need to know all the values because it's just the middle value that we need to know. And it's usually not affected by the extreme values, because what the extreme values will do might just shift the midpoint from the 125th data point to maybe the 126th data point if you add two values on the higher extreme. Therefore, the middle point will be shifted from 125th to the 126th point, which doesn't really affect the points that much because they're ordered. And usually the jumps between the ordering is not that high. So the median will not be really affected by those extreme values. And you just need to know the values around the middle. But remember, the median only takes into account the order of the values. And so it does as well ignore most of the values that are there. As we said, the extreme values will not really affect it because it doesn't really take them into account. Because what it takes into account is just the position of the middle ordered value. And so from these three advantages and disadvantages of your mode, median, and mean, you can carefully choose what measure of central tendency to use depending on the questions that you get.